What's up, guys? In this episode, I will be interviewing Dan Hurd, who is the founder of the One Pedal at a Time movement. Dan's story is one of the more inspiring stories that I've really come across recently. He struggled with depression and suicide after his term in the military, and a friend turned him on to cycling, and for years now, he's traveled the entire United States, just about. Yeah, Dan is a great guy. I want to encourage you to follow him on all of his social media, and check out his podcast, Friends from the Road, where he interviews people that he's met in all of his travels and stuff. And I actually did the voice introduction to his podcast, which was really kind of cool. Never did anything like that before, and yeah, man, that was pretty cool. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and thanks for watching. By the way, if you or anybody struggles with depression or suicidal thoughts, please go to OPAATmovement.com and check out the resources Dan has on his website. We all need a helping hand sometimes. There's no shame in asking for assistance when you need it the most. Man, doing all right?
I'm doing great, man. How are you today?
Dude, I'm fantastic. Thank you for asking. A lot of your posts on social media, very inspiring. I want to encourage everyone to check out your social media accounts and stuff. I've looked forward to this episode because we're going to get into some things that I think you are uniquely equipped to address. And I really feel like it's going to be an uplifting, inspiring time here.
Yeah. First of all, Josh, thank you for having me. It's been great talking to you for the last few weeks to get this planned out. For me, it's, as you said, I started a foundation called the One Pedal at a Time movement, also known as OPAAT. And OPAAT movement is about promoting cycling while raising suicide awareness. So what inspired that journey and everything involved in that was my own suicide attempts. I attempted suicide 3 times. I was planning a 4th when a friend got me on a bicycle. He had tried for many years to get me on bicycles. I rode motorcycles, and for many, many years, I was just like, dude, I'm not doing it. The mentality that I had looking back on it was that I was better than cycling because I had a motor. So I immediately shut it down because I thought I was better than it. Little did I know that it would change my life and put me on the path that I'm on today. But it took time to get to that. What ended up happening was, I'm a veteran, so I served 4 years in the Navy, and at this point I had been out for about 7 years at the time. And my therapist, he was trying to get me to think about certain things that really inspired me to want to the good times in my life, the ones that I could look back on and be like, those are the reasons why I want to live. And for me, it was the people I served in the military with. And for a lot of those times, it was, just trying to get the idea of being around people that, had my back and vice versa. And a few days after my therapist suggested that, my friend that got me on a bicycle was really getting me into it, getting me going. And he was like, man, when I was your age, I wanted to ride my bike across the country. And for me, that was the moment that I knew what I wanted to do. Light bulbs went off, fireworks were exploding in my head. It was like I just got the message of what I was supposed to be doing. So over the course of about 6 or 7 months, I started planning out a trip to hit the lower 48 states. And what inspired that, the lower 48, was the people I served in the military with. I served with a lot of people. So for them, they live in 35 states at the time. And to get to them, I had to do 42. And I was okay with doing just 42 states, but everyone was like, why aren't you doing the other 6? So, at that point, what's the extra 6 actually? It's not that much of a difference. So I embarked on this journey. I started March 5th of 2018 from Plymouth, Massachusetts. And this journey has been just shy now of 3 years with some hiccups in it, which we'll be talking about, I'm sure. But for me, it was, it was things that I needed. I needed to get my head out of my own head, get into the certain thoughts that I was stuck in. And for me, I needed an escape. I needed something that was good for me, and cycling did that. Physically, it put me in the best physical shape of my entire life. I went from about 270 pounds from my last suicide attempt to about 155 while I was riding. And right now, because back in October, I got hit by a car. I haven't been able to ride a bicycle. So I've been in recovery mode. I've been doing my own podcast. Recently was Movement Mondays on Heart of Volunteer Veterans podcast. I'm transitioning now because I'm getting ready to hopefully get back on the road to a new series coming out called Friends from the Road podcast. And that'll be just more conversations about people that I'm meeting along the way. So I'm excited to continue that. But, this journey, it's really been about, showing how being engaged in activities, if that's for, obviously I'm promoting cycling. The goal is to find something that's your Zen. For me, cycling is my Zen. People look at Zen activities as gardening, doing art, doing music like you do. I know that's a huge piece in your life. Having a Zen activity, being out in the outdoors, being able to enjoy those times that really bring you peace are important. So I encourage people to go out there and find those activities that either you already have, but if you don't know what it is, be willing to try it. And that's what my struggle was for many years is I could have potentially avoided 2 of my suicide attempts if I had just got on a bicycle when my friend asked me to the first time. Everything happens for a reason. Obviously it didn't happen then, but it happened when it was meant to.
You have such a beautiful story, man. I know your story is still in the making too. I feel like a lot of times we feel kind of compelled to always give and we live happily ever after kind of story with our lives. And it's not always the case, and what you had to endure recently with your accident is a good example where, man, it's like you go into a direction and life happens. It's there's that John Lennon quote about life is what happens to you when you make plans, and the joy that you've cultivated, the momentum of your life is that you obviously had enough momentum and joy working in your life to where obstacles are things you go through now, rather than life being one giant series of obstacles that just flying at you and you can't handle it. You are handling it. It's very inspiring. In our lives, we have there's 2 dimensions. There's the collective kind of like the way we belong in society with people. And there's the kind of our individual, our individuality, and they both have to work together. In my own life, I've focused almost by necessity on my own individuality because I feel like in order to approach aspects of your own brokenness, you have to become an individual. You have to focus on your individual pain. It's telling you something. Pain is too often something I think we think it is a problem, and really pain is telling us something. It's like we have nerves because when something hurts, it's our body telling us something's wrong. So it's like if your arm is on fire and you weren't hurting, it's your body telling you something's wrong. When we experience pain in life and experiencing, being able to learn how to address our own pain, and it's part of what I think me and you are doing in our own missions and stuff is, promoting a message that pain isn't something that you should avoid, or pain is not something that should be feared, but it's something that you have to confront and realize that it's a healthy relationship with experiencing vulnerability and pain, and it's something that only when you know how to deal with it can you transcend it and learn how to live the best life that you have. And man, it's I didn't mean to go off on all that, but that was just kind of like random thoughts. But
but they totally those random thoughts that you're saying really do have a lot of meaning to it, and I appreciate that you that you see so much inspiration and everything through me as well. And I tell people all the time, I'm still just a human being. As human beings, we have a lot of stuff that come at us every single day. We have burdens, we have responsibilities, we have all these things that kind of slow us down in a sense. We get to a point where it gets overwhelming. That one thing spills over that it feels like everything's about to spill over. And that's when the stresses really take over.
Yeah.
And I'm still a human being. I still deal with those. Even last month, I was really dealing with it because I was thinking so much about the future. Something I've learned and something that I still continue to try to practice is it's important to live in the moment. it's nice to know what's going to come ahead, and it's good to remember what's happened in the past,
Yeah.
but you'll never get anywhere unless you're thinking about now.
I mentioned this to someone, and this was something that was kind of like, see, it's where during the day, I have friends on social media. I probably drive them crazy because every once I tend to, like, when I have inspirational thoughts as a writer, I feel like I have to immediately jump on it and like capture that inspiration and deliver it. But to all of my friends, I'm constantly like, when they're posting things, I'm responding. And so I probably seem like this needy person who's like constantly wanting to but it's like, I love this stuff so much that whenever someone posts something that really speaks to me, part of what I've had to deal with OCD is that, like, I can't let go of something until I go deeper, until I feel something that clicks, you know? And so when something just sounds good, that's just the beginning to like a really fundamental idea or insight. And what you just mentioned, I want to read this. Recently having a realization of the precious positive tension to life, and especially a life lived at a pace. Tension often confuses us. For some reason, we believe we need a defense against our own vulnerability, probably because we tend to stack up all the effort that is required for many things and make those things seem insurmountable and accomplishment in the moment, thus making us feel immediately weak in comparison to our dreams. Never mind the nonsensical nature of judging one's limits by what we can immediately accomplish. We can accomplish so much if we can just calm down, steady our ship, and enjoy the journey. A vehicle can go 500,000 miles, but rarely, if ever, does it ever come close to a fraction of that at once. And that's
Absolutely,
you know, and it's one of those ideas. See, I needed that, honestly. I know that someone else is thinking about something, and so I like to kind of, you know, kind of drop a little pellet of what I think is an underlying idea that moves you. Like, it's weird. Weakness is something that we all have, and yet all it takes is just a little extra strength, a little extra perception and knowledge to align us within, to be able to have that infrastructure to hold whatever we're dealing with, man. It's like when I work out, there's times where I feel so psychologically weak and I just want to give up. And then there's times where I still feel that way, but there's something like an underlying resolution and like association and like of how to go through what I'm enduring myself. These things that we're trying to promote, this way of life, it's not ridding life of weakness. We're not ridding life of our own vulnerability or problems. Like you're saying, how we're all human. And yet all it takes is just a little bit extra, just slightly deeper understanding to some of these problems that it can be the difference between life and death.
it really can be.
Giving someone a reason to stay in the fight, giving someone a reason to stay within something that knows there's something deeper beyond the moment that I'm enduring. I've begun to be less and less mindful of my own individuality in one sense, to where I feel like the things that I have to say aren't just for me. These are things that I think a lot of people need to hear what you have to say, what I have to say. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Things have really, really gotten bad. And I feel like it's right now, your message is apropos. Your mission right now is needed more than ever. And
yeah, well, especially so since 2020 with the pandemic, the number of suicide attempts and people having thoughts of suicide has increased huge because of the isolations and things that we've had to do over the last year and changes that have been made. But the thing is it's not a new problem. I want to make sure people understand that it's not something that's just come out of nowhere. Suicide in the United States has gone up every year since 1999.
Oh, wow.
So when you think of those things, it's a lot of people. There's a lot of people that commit suicide every day. Right now, the last statistic that came out was 135 people a day. And when you see that number, you're like, wow, that's insane. And then think of 20 times as many people attempted. Just think it. It's crazy when you think of those numbers. So when
but you said 135
a day,
suicides a day. Is
that's just in the United States.
Oh my God. And how many attempts?
And 20 times as many attempts.
Wow. Dude, I had no idea, dude. I had no idea it was that bad. I mean, 135, dude, that's almost like take a high school. And that's my
graduating class.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Just go
every day.
Wow.
Not every year, every day.
God.
So, again, going back to before, it's about living in the moment. That's what the one pedal at a time movement's about. And for me, it was about living in the moment that got me through that third attempt, and that fourth attempt faded away because of it. OPAAT has taught me a lot of things about myself and people. A lot of people don't want to hear this because it sounds bad. When people say you need to go be selfish, and people are like, oh man, I can't do that. I have to help other people. I need to take care of people. And that's what I do. I'm a helper. I'm the same way. I am at heart. I am a helper. I help people when I can in one form or another. But it took this journey for me to become selfish. I had to become selfish. I had to say that I was doing this journey for myself, not for anybody else. And as soon as I took it in my hands for myself, is when I started healing myself. And as I began to heal, I realized that there were other people out there that were struggling that I could share my story with. And that's kind of the reason why I started sharing my story, is because I saw the need for it. It wasn't that I wasn't looking for attention or anything like that. I was just trying to do my thing. But there was a need for it. So I jumped on it because, if I can change one person's outcome, which thankfully I've had, I've done 80 suicide interventions on my journey.
Dude.
And I'm sure there's even more out there that have been inspired or thoughts changed. But those are the ones that I can say that I've been involved in directly. So for me, that's why I keep doing what I'm doing. That's why I keep, even though I'm not on a bicycle right now and I haven't been in over 4 months, I'm still doing things. I'm still reaching out on social media. I'm doing the podcast. I'm trying to get people to be aware that there is a lot of goodness in this world. And that there's still reasons to live, even if you aren't thinking, even if I'm not talking about suicide awareness, I'm talking about other people's causes, that are doing good things in the world in times where, this last year, a lot of people would say that the world's going in the opposite direction, that there's not any good, and there's not as many good people in this world anymore. And I will tell you from my own experiences and from living it day to day, that there is a lot of good people in this world and in this country, in the United States. So it's important to remember that and to see that stuff. If you're only watching the news every day, all you're seeing 99% of bad things and maybe 1% of a good thing. So all you see is the bad. And that's not the case. That's not how this world works. And
there was a book I didn't read it, but it was one of those books that I wanted to check out. It was by Steven Pinker, and he talks about kind of what you talked about, how everyone assumes that the world's gotten worse, when in reality the world's gotten so much better than what it's been ever. The amount of hunger in the world has drastically gone down. Life expectancy, all sorts of kinds of improvements have happened, and yet we are so mindful of the bad. And I would even, I'm trying to be very, very careful with I have kind of off the wall political views. I'm kind of all over the place because I'm not an ideologue. I like to really view things issue by issue, but then look at the big picture and try to make sense of it. But I like to view people as individuals, and I never like making any group the other or the enemy, because I feel like we're all more complex than that, and everyone deserves the dignity of life and the honor of their own process of what they're enduring in life, and not the best that I can do is try to be understanding of that. But I do think that there's a lot of agendas that are invested in keeping us divided and keeping us focused on the negative. Because when you're focused on the negative, you're much more reactionary. And when you're much more reactionary, you're more easily controlled. And,
Well,
you know,
I agree with that partially. The other part, and it's still kind of in the same category as yours, but it's a little bit different. I believe that people watch the news because it makes them feel better about themselves. And when I say that, and this is my own opinion, so if you don't agree with it, feel free to put it in the comments. Let me know. But we all have our own opinions, and this is mine. My opinion is we have people that watch the news because they're looking for something that makes them validate that their life is better than other people's. So when bad things happen, if really bad things like school shootings and all these mass shootings in general, or hate crimes, whatever it is, we can sit there and be like, well, that's not happening in my neighborhood. Or even if it is happening in your neighborhood, you're like, well, it's not happening in my house. So it makes you think that you're doing all right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Then at the same time, what it's doing is it's creating that fear that you get from watching all this stuff. And you're like, oh my God, it's happening more and more often. For instance, like this last year, we saw a lot of video for protesting and riots and all these other things happening. And, if you watch the news, you're going to look at that and you're like, Armageddon's coming. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But, I've been on those streets. I've seen like very little of the stuff that they show on the news. I've been to Denver where they said they're, lighting cars on fire, and there was one car that got lit on fire. I was there when it happened. I wasn't there when it happened, but I was literally in the town or city.
Yeah.
So, but that's the news is meant to make drama. Drama sells.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And there's I think we're all designed and equipped for awareness. Like, I think we want to have an idea of the way the world is, so that as we're navigating reality, we feel more in place. It's like we have an awareness of our place in it. I think the older you get, the more you see the subtle ways that information is manipulated. And what's weird, to bring it back to mental health, like, I began to notice early on, like when I really began to seek my own help, my own healing, my own wholeness and stuff, I began to really notice, because I was acquainted with my own neuroticism, I began to be aware of how that neuroticism in certain ways, plays out in society. Unfortunately, I feel like our environment, our political environment especially, is really oversimplifying people, and it's very, very toxic. It's promoting unhealthy psychology. It's promoting a reactionaryism. I need to see this person as a human being and not jump to conclusions. We almost are being led to take just general information about someone and immediately have a painted identity of who that person is. We essentially are conditioning people to having prejudices and being able to discriminate based on some sense of virtue, and that's very unhealthy. It's very, very unhealthy. And that's one of the things that I've begun to really, in the recent years, more and more drop away from focusing on partisan political angles and see things from a mental health and spiritual perspective, because I realized that in order for us to really affect change, we can't trust it with people that are stuck in a system that is built on, I think, unhealthy psychology and unhealthy ways of viewing people. Like, what we are the answer to our problems, but it starts with us. It starts with us being able to view each other as human beings and being able to promote a healthy way of seeing ourselves and seeing other people.
You brought up that we are the answer to all our problems, and in a funny, non-funny way of saying it is we are the answer. If we can be the negative answer or the positive answer. So either way, we're the answer to it. In a lot of ways, when we think of like how we can fix the world, right? We think of how we can affect the most amount of people. And then when we think about it, we're like, man, that's a lot of people. I don't think I'm only one person. I can't change the world, right? That's not our goals. I think a lot of it, our goals are as humans, to change our world is to change ourselves. So if we can change ourselves and then, just pass on that positive routines, energy, whatever it is that you're doing, getting it out there for other people to say, man, I like the way Josh lives. He does this every day. He jams out. He does his music. I'm going to get into music. And you just inspired somebody to get into music itself. That's how we change it. Obviously it's not for music. Maybe it is for you, but whatever that thing is that is changing the world for yourself, and then passing that on as a ripple effect to other people.
Yeah.
The more we can get people to do that over and over and over again. Hey, remember for a long time, and I hear it every once in a while, the pay it forward program that they do, where you hold the door open for somebody. Hey, thank you so much. No problem. Pay it forward. Or you buy somebody's coffee that's behind you, whatever it is. Having that mentality of paying it forward all the time, regardless of what it is.
Yeah.
That's how we're going to change the world. That's how we're going to make it a better place. That's how we're going to change, so much stuff. Society in general, we have this issue of, for a long time, it'd be like, if I was coming up to you or walking by, I knew you, Josh, it'd be like, today we go, hey, Josh, how's it going? Oh, Dan, how's it been, man? How you doing? And even if it's literally just for a 30-second conversation, we're almost just saying hi. We're not saying, hey, man, how are you doing, in the sense of actually wanting to know how you're doing. In most cases. I'm not saying that's not how everybody is, but society in general, that's how we are. And how are you, or hey, how's it going, or anything like to that effect really just means hi.
Yeah.
We're just throwing extra words out there. So what I encourage people to do, and this is my ripple effect, is if you are out there and you are like me, I greet everybody. I say hello to almost everybody I can, unless it's going to affect their safety. If they're working, like if they're roof workers or construction workers, and they're actively working, I ain't saying hi to them, because I'm not trying to risk their safety. But if they're staring at me and they see this guy on a bicycle, I'm waving to them. I'm saying, have a great day. I'm getting their attention. And that's what, just being out there and engaging with people, saying hello and engaging them just simply, is good enough. If you're going to ask, how are you, or how you're doing, or anything like that, be willing to listen to the answer.
Yeah.
And if you hear somebody that goes, and Josh, I almost guarantee in your field, you've heard it, because I know a lot of musicians, you go, hey, how's it going? You're like, well, a lot of people will be like, shit's happening, but nobody's listening, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, man, you got it. Go, keep going. Right. Or like, oh man, that sucks. You'll get there. We just like keep it very generic. Or, in reality, all we're doing is telling them that we're not there to listen. So what I try to do is I actually try to encourage people when they say that, or, I'm okay, just a simple, like, when you're doing good, even if you're not doing the greatest, you're going to be like, I'm doing really good, or I'm great, man. I'm alive. I'm doing good.
Yeah.
But if something's going on, you're like, I'm doing okay. There's something there, but you're not really willing to share it. When that happens, I'm like, hey person, hey man, or hey so-and-so, what's going on? Like, oh no, nothing to worry about. I'm like, no, really, like, I'm here to listen. Like, what do you got going on? And engage them, because a lot of times they'll be like, oh, this is what's going on. And a lot of times I've done it in my past. I've had it people done to me.
Mm-hmm.
And someone will be like, hey, Dan, what's going on, man? I'm like, well, girlfriend broke up with me. This is going on, blah, blah, blah. Start like getting the information out there that it needs to get out. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And we all have done it where we get into like, we get on this hamster wheel, I guess is the best way to put it, the loop, where loop it when you do your music loops, when you play the same notes, like
Yeah.
6 notes, and then you put it on a loop and then you stop playing the notes, but then it's just saying the same thing over and over again for you.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, when we get into like a depressive state and when we get into these certain state of minds, we get stuck on loops. And sometimes we're saying the same thing out loud to the person that's listening to us, where we brought up 10 times in the conversation that I just, I feel like I'm meant to be with this person and they're not with me anymore.
Yeah.
I get that. So be willing to listen to those things. To make things better in this world, we gotta do it together.
Yeah.
That's why my nonprofit is called a movement.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to take just Dan to change suicide awareness. It's not going to take
Mm-hmm.
these 30, 40 different organizations that are for suicide awareness, and then even more for mental health combined.
Yeah.
There's just so many out there, but it's not going to be these groups that are doing it by ourselves. It's going to literally take it so that we need everybody. It takes a movement. It takes a group, a mass to make change happen. And that's how I'm trying to do it. Our goal isn't to prevent suicides.
Mm-hmm.
There's enough organizations out there that are trying to prevent them. And I'm thankful that they're there in place that are doing that. But our goal is to actually encourage survivors, people that have never dealt with suicide or anything that, maybe they've never even had a suicidal thought. We're trying to get them involved. We're trying to educate them and get them on board to be part of the change. We need to make suicide safe for communities. And to make suicide safe for communities, we need to educate the public. I guarantee there's a lot of people that are even listening to this that have never, that have no real true understanding of what happens when someone goes into a suicidal mindset. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's what we need to change. We need to get people to understand, to see the signs, to see the invitations of when somebody may be thinking of suicide. And if they're not, if they're just having a bad day, and you ask somebody, that's another thing that our society struggles with, that we need to get out of, is asking the question. A lot of people won't, we see people that are struggling, but we don't want to say to ourselves or to them, man, I wonder if they're thinking about suicide.
Yeah.
It almost never comes up until after it's too late.
I think there's some real popular person who came with the whole idea of the iceberg. How you have like the outer things, and you have like inwardly there's all this other stuff. And so when people see the appearance of somebody and they see certain states of mind, there's all of this. That's just like a small part of this whole picture of someone's life. In my own experience, there is a chain link kind of different areas of life that when we start with one thing, it leads us into other things. And so when we're looking at, say, the iceberg, focusing on like the immediate areas that go to someone's inner life, like what's immediately behind their eyes. It's kind of a complicated thing to look at, because you can go into brain chemistry, you can go into what they're eating, you can go into trauma, you can go into spiritual beliefs, you can go into different things, and there's such dimensionality to it that one difficulty that we have trying to address this stuff is that we don't know what first to address. Everyone's kind of different. There is one area of pain or one area of neglect in their life that is the area that has the most immediate need of addressing. But that's not the only problem. Ultimately, everyone has to have some sort of personal theory of everything. And it's my own belief that this is something that I actually wanted to ask you about. In your introduction, man, you mentioned that there was elements of joy that you found in the OPAAT movement. For me, in my own recovery and my own healing of myself, and being able to open myself up to spiritually and all these different areas that kind of fed into still the process that I'm in now. There was a revisiting, almost a rekindling of a lot of energy that was lost from my childhood. Like, it's, in my understanding, it's almost like we come into this world unconditionally. We stumble and fall, and yet everyone still celebrates us because we're alive, trying to be. We're trying to be human. We're trying to be a person, and even in our failure, we're celebrated. Then we enter into our education system where failure is held against you, to where it's now outward. It's not about striving after an ideal within yourself and trying to belong. It's about, okay, I now have to do this. And so there's much more of an outward motivation than an inward motivation, and I know that there's probably some debate on that, but generally speaking, I feel like unconsciously we're trying to obtain something rather than being celebrated by what we've already obtained and being, an organic, unconditional life. And so as we get older, there's all this egocentric ways of looking at things that more and more steal that sort of organic, natural life that we have when we come into this world. That creates voids that then we have to fill that with something. When it comes to addressing mental health in my own life, it was realizing that in the vacuum of joy comes things that we are very unconscious about, as far as our attachments to wrong ideas of the world that we think are right. We're trying to do right. We're trying to do and be what we think we're supposed to be, but it lacks that sort of personal attachment or that personal depth that we come into this world with. And so we essentially, our capacity to live this life is kneecapped by our ability, or our essentially our disability that we've inflicted on ourselves, and essentially by society, by outwardly striving to be something that we already are. For me, it's like trying to obtain some sense of being outwardly is a trap, because you never are perfect. You never are going to be someone who just all of a sudden you figured out the last bit of revelation or knowledge or self-discovery or whatever, and then all of a sudden for the rest of your life you have no problems. It's kind of like we are vulnerable by nature. In our comfort with our own vulnerability, comfort with our own weakness, only in that sort of sense of comfort can we then transcend our different various ways of experiencing discomfort. It's kind of a paradox, But it sounds like to me, man, like with the OPAAT movement, the way that you really discovered being a part of a group, you almost rekindled this joy of being part of a, as kids, I think we romanticize the world and we see ourselves being a part of something. And that probably even in the military, in lots of ways, people wouldn't see it this way, but like, there's a certain childlike sense of belonging that's preserved and being a part of the world. You're taking this energy, of life, and it's channeled into something. If you don't have that, then you are going to go into isolation, and you're going to stop growing. Sounds like, man, you've been able to sort of rekindle a lot of that in your movement.
As human beings, change is happening around us every single day. So change realistically should be very comfortable for us. But yet, when change happens, especially when we're not paying attention that change has occurred already, until it's too late, like we get those blinders on, the blinders of change that I call them. And then by the time it's in front of us, we're like, oh man, I can't do this. What is this? How am I going to do this? You know what I'm saying? So then it becomes uncomfortable change. But change is happening every single day around us. We literally are born into change. We are changing as we are birthed all the way to the day we die. Life is changing. The cells our body is made up of changes. Our day and night changes every single day. There's change happening. I think it's important for people to realize, that's why I encourage living in the moment so much, because we're so distracted by our past and our future, we're not living in the moment. And if we're not living in the moment, we're not seeing the change as it happens. For people that are the younger generation, you know, I don't like to consider myself a millennial, but I guess technically I am. I'll be 32 next month. And, you know, I feel like a lot of people have this mentality, like, I'm going to be a millionaire. Like, maybe it's not exact wordage or whatever, but I feel like everyone has this thing, like, I'm going to be this person. But then they just get that stuck. They're thinking about the future. This is where I want to be. This is where I want to be. But they're not doing today to get to there. So I feel like a lot of times it's getting just to take that time and take a step back and look at what you're doing now, and take that and make it comfortable, make the moment comfortable for yourselves. I feel like, again, I think that's why 2020 was so difficult for so many people, is we went from going constantly in the motions of the now to having to be like, all right, what do I do now? And people were just like, I can't do this. So again, I think it's important to take time for yourself to get the now happening, so that you can live comfortably in the discomfort. Because if so many people I've heard say they don't like change, and no offense to any of the older timers there, but they have seen so much change, but they're the ones that I hear it the most from, is I don't like the change that's happened since I was your age, or the world's changed so much since I was your age, whatever you want to say. And I just feel like, in reality, the change was happening regardless. It was just we had the blinders on, so we didn't see until it was right in front of us. You know, the joy. You know, I found a lot of joy in motorcycles. You know, for a lot of people out there, the motorcycles is a huge therapy for them. I also thought that cycling was, you know, something that you did when you were, you know, a kid. And the road bike guys, those were the guys that were like, just high energy. That's just how I looked at them. And I got a lot of energy, but I'm not like that type of high energy, I don't think. But for me, you know, just getting on a bicycle, it brings me that clearness. It clears my head. It makes it so I have to live in the moment. Like, I get to enjoy the beauty that's surrounding me at a pace. Like, for instance, something I love about cycling is I can be on the bicycle, or let me go back. I can be on a motorcycle and I can ride down the road, right? Maybe I'm on the beachfront and I'm riding my motorcycle down Main Street or Ocean Boulevard, whatever you want to call it. And everybody's walking by, checking out things, and you're just sitting there rubbing your engine. You're not having any conversations. You're showboating, in a sense, I guess is the best way to do it. What's cool about a bicycle is I can literally see you in a distance, 20 feet down, coming towards me, and I'd be like, hey, how's it going today? You're like, oh, it's good. How are you? I'm like, yeah, it's great. I'm doing this. And we just had a conversation while we were going past each other. Even if you're walking, I'm riding, or we're both riding, you can literally have an interaction. So I get to have a lot of interactions with people. And then when I'm not in the populated area, I get to have me time. And you know, a lot of people struggle with me time. I used to struggle with it. And at times I still do. I'm still a human being. I'm still a work in progress. And for me, the me time is the time where I get to process my thoughts and dissect things that maybe I don't usually get to do unless I'm not distracted. You know, in today's world, it's hard. You could be doing this, you know, I'd be working on the computer here, and then literally my phone might vibrate, and I'll be staring at my phone for 20 minutes. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot I'm doing this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Dude,
and I know, as you know, I know for I think maybe for you have similar things. Like, you get like so much attention going on where you focus on one thing, but then something catches your attention for just a second where it takes you off that, and then you're stuck on the next thing. And then you're like, oh man, I didn't finish this.
Yeah. So I'm diagnosed with OCD and ADHD. So it's just like a nuclear explosion of neurosis.
If you get an opportunity, if you haven't already, Josh, and for everybody else out here listening, go check out my Movement Monday episode. It's episode 5, ADHD. And it's with Family Adventures.
Okay.
And it's really a great episode talking about ADHD, and it's a really powerful episode. So I recommend it for you.
Absolutely.
To go check it out, and for everybody else as well. That's Movement Monday on Heart of Volunteer Veterans Podcast. That was a really great episode, and check them all out. So there's 13 Movement Monday episodes, and it was Movement Monday started because of my accident. So I needed something to stay busy. I needed to fill that void of time that like we were talking about earlier. We get done with one thing, and then we have space. We need to fill that space. I tell everybody that, for instance, for cycling was my space filled for drugs. It replaced my drug use. So a lot of people in my opinion, a lot of people that are addicted to drugs or alcohol, like I was, and a lot of people I know, it's because of underlying issues, whether that is, previous traumas, whatever it is. What we're doing is we're escaping from dealing with those traumas or issues. What cycling has done for me is it keeps my head clear enough where I'm not really escaping those issues, but it's making so I have to focus on them. So cycling is my addiction. I tell people that all the time. So when I lost cycling because of the accident, and I couldn't walk, podcasting became that for me. That void was filled really quickly. It was 2 weeks after my accident. I filled that void from cycling every day to I'm going to be podcasting as much as I can. Going back to your initial question, I kind of veered off topic, but the joy that the bicycle brings me is just so amazing. It gives me so much things to live for. It's giving me purpose. It's giving me a passion. It's kept me in shape. Like I said, I've lost over 100 pounds from cycling and just staying fit. I feel like I'm happier than I've ever been. And even still when I'm not when I'm off the bike, doing what I'm doing right here, having interviews and doing podcasts, it's giving me that void to fill. So it's giving me that joy still. And I think it's important, to have for me, cycling. I needed it to keep me sane in a lot of ways. And I think that it's the joys that, being by myself or with a group, I can still have fun on it. So I think that's another thing that we all need to kind of pay attention to is if that activity is no fun by yourself, then it's not the right activity for you.
Yeah.
But it's got to be the same activity that, I know if I use you a lot, Josh, because you play music, you can sit there and probably jam out, play music, do your shows by yourself all the time. But every once in a while, it's nice to have a friend come on, like, just to have someone to jam out with, or maybe you guys throw a band together to play for the night. But it's something that you can do by yourself and in a group, and you still have that passion for it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's important for people to have. If you can go, I was talking to somebody the other day, they're like, oh, I love biking, but I don't like to do it by myself. Well, you don't really love biking then. You just love the idea of biking. The opportunity to be in a group.
Yeah.
But it's not really the biking that you love. It's the interactions that you love. You're just using the bike to get to that interaction.
Yeah. And
they're like, you're right. I'm like, maybe you should. I was like, keep riding your bike. I love that you're riding a bike, but go look at something else. If you can't do it by yourself, then it's not the right activity. For people out there that love gardening, you love gardening by yourself. But if you have like a community garden, you got, hey, today we're going to meet up and we're going to do a de-weeding group or whatever. And so you got 20 people there gardening together and you're still loving it. That is the Zen activity for you. So, find that joy, find that activity that you can do by yourself with just somebody else. And for me, that's cycling. It's given me so much in my own life. Like I said, for me, it gave me purpose. It gave me a reason to live. It may not be the reason that I lived, but it gave me a reason to find.
Yeah. No, yeah, man. And, I being involved in one of the places that I teach music at is a music school, and I've taught at several music schools, and I've taught lessons. And I mean, one of the huge satisfying things about that is being able to see you tap into someone's potential to where you see their whole person become more dimensionalized. It's like it awakens other areas of themselves, and you see all of a sudden a fuller person. You see someone kind of awakened, and man,
it's that video game of life. They just leveled up.
Yeah, exactly, man, exactly. And it's I love that analogy, by the way. That's like again, like there's such potent energy in like a lot of our childhood experiences where there's like principles we understand that like all the time. And when I'm doing things, and I will have flashes of like video games, because it's like I've learned certain principles and stuff. It's actually kind of hilarious. But I digress. You're talking about Zen activities. There's something to be said about all sorts of kinds of things that we can do that access parts of ourselves that I think too often our society beats out of us. And we're so self-aware right now, or self-conscious. We're not really self-aware.
We need to become self-aware.
Yeah. And it's weird. Self-consciousness is like the evil twin of self-awareness. It's like the opposite, and so social media and so many different pressures that we experience. I think when we get into our teen years, and we almost feel the pressures of trying to become a person, and we so look outside ourselves for what we already have. We try to build another person rather than actually embrace the person that's already there. And it takes time for us to finally realize, like, I got to embrace who I actually am, not try to create someone totally new, because that's when you cut off yourself from your own relationship with the world, your own memories, your own, and I mean, too often it's laced with negative things, but there's a process when we find, I think, our Zen activities, these things that cultivate a rekindling of a lot of that lost youthfulness, that the original unconditional life that we have. Ultimately, I like to think unconditional love and unconditional life are linked. We come into this world unconditionally. We don't ask for our existence. It's given to us, and either we're going to be allowing ourselves to be possessed with gratitude, right? Oh my God, I'm here. This is freaking amazing, or it's like, the hell is this place? It's like the sentiment of one or the other is going to be kind of like our general frame. And when it comes to like you're talking about, like with what you do, there's such a element of community involved, where finding things where healthy community is involved. We're not trying to be so self-conscious of ourselves. We're giving ourselves room to grow. We're accepting ourselves and consequently accepting other people, developing a healthy community that isn't based on ideology, or based on any sort of I like having people that believe things different than me around me. I like having people that genuinely are sincere, healthy individuals, but they're different, and they challenge you. And being able to find those people in your life are so important, man, because if we get into echo chambers and we stay there, we totally kneecap our ability to grow and ultimately
to see things in a different perspective.
One thing that I've been really trying to focus on in my own podcast is this idea of us confronting this idea of our defectiveness, because ultimately our pain, the biggest pain that we experience in life, is that pain that drives us away from people, to isolate. And that makes us feel like, well, I'm different from everybody else. No one can understand me, and no one can understand me. And it's a self-perpetuating, it's like the loop you were talking about, man. It's a perpetuating of your pain, because essentially it's a belief system that interprets what's happening to you, in a forever unending way of seeing yourself.
And I agree with that. So what the thing is like, you brought up is so many of us we get into this mindset and this ideology that it's that we're not good enough, and that we have these flaws that make us not the perfect candidate or whatever it is. And unfortunately, that's because of our society putting these things into our mindset that says that, um, you know, I'm glad it's changing now, but for a long time it was like for women, uh, you had to look a certain way, you had to dress a certain way to be considered a woman, or at least an attractive woman. These models that they had for so many years were um, not your normal woman.
Mm-hmm.
But what it did was it made these women that are, the normal looking woman to be like, well, I don't look like her, so I'm not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And for the man side, for so many years, we as men have been told that we're supposed to be the anchor, that we're supposed to toughen it up and figure it out on our own. And if you're a man and you share your feelings, that's a weakness. You're weak. Um, that we brought up vulnerability earlier in the episode, and I think it's really important. Vulnerability is huge. I think that's a huge strength if
Mm-hmm.
you're willing to be vulnerable, and that's something that telling your story,
Mm-hmm.
engaging people in your story, whether that's your story of the last 10 minutes of your life, or maybe it's the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years of your life.
Mm-hmm.
You're sharing pieces of you that maybe in your past you wouldn't feel comfortable sharing.
Mm-hmm.
There's been many times where I wouldn't share that I was suicidal,
Mm-hmm.
but nowadays it's one of the first things I talk to people about. I went out to dinner the other night with my neighbor, and um, he saw it for two people in the interactions I had while I was with him. First guy said hello to him, shook his hand, because he was a veteran, said, "Hey man, I wanted to say thank you for what you're doing." Gave him one of my cards to say, check out what I'm doing and everything.
Mm-hmm.
The second one was a woman. She was our waiter, our server, and asked her what she thought I should have for the meal, explained to her what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And my neighbor was like, "Man, those two people, you changed their day, maybe their life, but definitely their day." Like, and if we just do that sometimes, where we just engage people into to have that,
Yeah.
I think that it's how we make things better. Again,
Yeah.
it's about trying to make the world better, man,
Yeah.
and
You
we
know,
got to engage people.
it's very interesting how much, if when we're able to go deeper kind of within ourselves, we sort of living life from a deeper place within ourselves is the consequence of us facing things that are deep within ourselves. The deepest things that we feel like are sucking our life out of us or draining us, or that giving us that feeling of defect. And the more that we're able to address that, we realize, wait, maybe other people feel this way. And just maybe, if I, with confronting this within myself and really finding answers for myself, I can not just have answers in the way that I respond to a question, but I can personify the answers that I find within myself that practically express themselves in my conversation with people. So when I look at someone and I even just say hello to them, they can feel the depth of my words. They can feel the depth of how I say something. I'm just not hello. I'm like, hey, how are you doing? And they can feel this warmth.
Mm.
And it's a warmth that you've cultivated within your own self. It's a warmth that, because you've looked at your own imperfections, your own sense of defectiveness, you realize, no, these are the areas that I grow in. These are the areas that, even though part of me shudders to confront them or to see them, to realize that we all have the capacity to have these areas of such potent vulnerability. And when we realize that we're not really alone, that we're all, some of us, I think, have to confront deeper things than others. I think the more pain and the more deeper our pain, it's actually, we have also the more capacity for joy, because the solution, the resolution that's required for us to solve our problems is joy, is cultivating such a potent resolution to some of these deep areas. And it's difficult. It's a process, but I feel like that it's almost like, when there's like in I think judo, where like you use your own opponent's strength against them. To me, trauma and pain, the negativity of life is very much that way. When we suffer such opposition, it's actually a great opportunity to really bring out the latent destiny of who you're supposed to be in this world. And now in the moment, it doesn't feel that way. In the moment, it feels like hell. And in some ways it is, and it's almost like when you're able to begin to feel like, wait, something just turned. So like there's a certain resolution, and you can kind of perceive, wait, I think I'm changing. I think something's changing. And I think I'm feeling strong. I'm feeling strength within myself. I'm feeling that I'm not defective. I'm not someone who just is weak and has to forfeit their life and their identity to some blind, unknown darkness within myself. There's a footing within yourself that you find, and you realize that your weakness is just a void of the light. And when you're able to sort of allow light to shine and have an experience of deeper truths in your own journey, it allows you to be someone who truly can bring to someone a depth of love and of authentic care and just genuine warmth that the world is really lacking right now, because we want truth and we want wholeness sometimes just so we can show someone, say, hey, I have value here, and it's kind of like real value isn't even really mindful of its own value, because it's so conscious of giving of itself, and I get on these tangents. It's like, man, you're such an interesting person to talk to, because dude, we have similarities, but we're also very different. I think when we're all involved in cultivating depth in what we're doing, sometimes we can feel the substance, but we're not even totally, we haven't unpacked all of the significance of what's happening in the moment. It's only when we look back and sometimes reflect, we're like, oh man, this was happening. But dude, there's so much substance that like you're cultivating in yourself, and that you're running after, and that you're seeking, and that you really, I feel like your journey is really in many ways just begun, and it's man, it's really, it's a pleasure to share these things and to talk these things with you, man. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, Josh, I appreciate that, because I definitely am. I'm definitely of action. That's why I'm doing the things that I've been doing for the last 3 years. But a lot of that has to do with, again, just trying to better my own life, and thankful that I had the opportunity to share that with other people. But for me, it's getting that it's getting that mindset out there, trying to show people, just to share your story, to get the information, because you never know who you're going to connect to. Kind of like you were saying, the depth of some of the things that I've been able to say, or the conversations that we've had in the past. But I think it's important for people to realize that, we have to, we all connect to something, we all have our own stories. Nobody has dealt with anything that we've dealt with personally, but there's people out there that have dealt with something similar.
Yeah.
The way I look at it is all I'm doing is I'm sharing our story. We have the same story. The difference is you have different events and different characters. But when you break it down to the root of the story, we all have the same story.
Yeah.
There's an up, there's a down. Think of it like the movies. You almost, it's like you see a movie coming out, you're like, oh yeah, this is a brand new movie. And then you can almost literally see what the plot's going to be like. Oh, there's going to be a climax, there's going to be a drop off, and there's going to be the happy ever ending love story, whatever it is, whatever the scenario is. But the story is always the same. It's just different events, different characters.
Yeah. That's why for me, in my own life, I've placed so much value unconsciously on language and communication because I've felt I had this strong sense of defect in myself that I felt like language is a way that I can bond with people. It's like I can communicate. I can say something and say, okay, is this how you experience it? And then I can kind of have that. I can develop that trust in other people through words, so when I say something and when someone responds with like, and their eyes, open wide and wow, that's exactly how it is. There's such a joy. There's such a joy in being able to say something. It's like, I mean, even if just in like in music or movies, how it's like, sometimes there's like an obscure movie that you like and you mention and someone else is like, I like that too. And like, there's something about sharing our common human experience that allows us to really feel like we're not alone in this thing, man. It's like there is that for saying, no man is an island, and yet we very much feel that way. And I like to think that we can develop ways that we connect with each other to where we're sort of a archipelago of our own islands, to where it's a systematic connection. There's still a degree of independence that we have, and personal responsibility and personal awareness that we have to kind of personally cultivate in our private lives. But the more that we're able to bond with each other through different things, whether it be conversation, activities, and just there's ways, man, that we're able to connect and make us feel like that we're not alone, because we're not, and
We're not, even when we think we are, when we're not, if anybody out there right now that's listening to this or at some point listening to this, even if you're in a state of mental health distress or thoughts of suicide, there's those times we think we're alone. We feel like we're on an island, even though we're surrounded by people a lot of times. So it's important to, that's why I encourage, and that's why I share my stories, because it may, we all think that our story is not efficient, or that it's not good enough to share, or people aren't willing to hear it, or that nobody understands what we're going through, so there's no reason to share it. And I don't know what you've gone through in life, Josh, but if you were to tell me your story, I can relate to it. For people that need to just have someone to talk to, that's, again, I'm still a work in progress. I'm healing from my own accident. My issue is I have trouble focusing, as you can tell, a couple times on this. But I know that it's an issue. So I tell people in advance, it's not that I'm not paying attention. It's just that's how my brain is right now.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to listen. So if somebody's out there that needs to talk about it or needs someone to talk to, find me, reach out to me, send me a message, check out ridewithdanusa.com and ridewithdanusa.com. You can find me on social media, on Facebook, Instagram. I have Twitter. I barely use it, so don't really count on that one. YouTube. You can email me at gmail.com. I want people to be okay. And we're not alone. And I don't want anybody that's listening to this, I don't want you to be alone. If you know somebody that feels alone, I don't want them to be alone. Tell them about Lieutenant Dan, tell them about me, tell them about Ride with Dan USA, the One Pedal at a Time movement. And, let's make this world suicide safer.
Amen, man. And good. Sorry.
I don't look at this, ideally, I would love for suicide to be zero a day. I'm a realist. I am. I would like that number to be lower. I'm not going to say zero, because I don't live in utopia. So, my goal is to try to make suicide safer communities, give people more opportunities to get the help that they need, to be involved in communities that have the ability to be part of the difference and making those differences and being part of that movement. So something that I do a lot, Josh, is I encourage people to go check out start.opatmovement.com.
Okay.
It's a program. It's an online course. It's 60 to 90 minutes of your time, and it teaches you the basics, the starting basics. That's why it's called START, of how to handle a situation if somebody is thinking the thoughts of suicide, and how to ask that question. So it's a really great program. I encourage it for anybody that I encourage it for anybody over the age of 13, first of all. But if you are in a public service atmosphere, if you deal with people on a daily basis, if you're a teacher, first responder, healthcare provider, you're a church person, you're part of a community. If you are part of a group and that you see on a regular basis, I encourage you to take this course. Again, it's start.opatmovement.com. It's a program that is it's getting us on the starting path to make better things.
Amen, man. Dude, and I'll share all of your links below, like on this video on YouTube and whatever. Yeah, I mean, the more that I can spread what you're doing to more people, and the better, man. I mean, this is I feel like, man, I told this to my last guest about, James Taylor once in an interview said that he is himself for a living. And I love that idea. And I feel like that, it's one thing to do that, in the arts and stuff, but it's also to do that with causes that, man, you are your movement. It's both me and you and what we're doing. This is our life. This is what we're passionate about. This is the thing that we want our lives to be connected to something that we're more alive doing it, but we're also promoting life itself, if that makes sense, and so there's this kind of wholeness, this sort of, I don't know, I guess, to where our lives are attached to something that feeds our own mental health and promotes it. And there's just such an overlapping sense of purpose. And
that's it right there.
Mm-hmm.
Purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the thing that people, that we're always driven to find. And if we don't feel like we have purpose, then we're not good enough for this world. And I think that's a lot of people that struggle with mental health and suicide in general, is including myself. I just felt like I didn't have enough purpose. I didn't have a purpose. I wasn't fulfilling the need of being a human being. I felt. I will tell everybody on here, I have found more purpose than I've ever have from cycling, but that purpose was already there. It was just the cycling tapped into it for me. We all have purpose, and there's so many people that go through their entire life saying that they never fulfilled their purpose.
How would you compare your life now in purpose, having gone through your accident recently, having found that purpose, versus the person that wasn't really tapping into that purpose, that was suicidal, was depressed? How would you compare how purpose functioned within both states of opposite, or both instances of confronting opposition in life, and about how that's this sort of joy and meaning that you found in your life, even though you couldn't do it, it helped, it was already unleashed in yourself. So when you had your action recently, compare and contrast your life when that happened, having already kind of cultivated that in you, compared to when you didn't have it.
Yeah. So before the accident, it was, like so many people, I just didn't feel like I had the purpose. I didn't, like I said, I felt like I wasn't fulfilling the need to help people or be involved in society as a functioning adult. But that's because, for really it was the idea of what I needed to fulfill to have that purpose, or to feel like I'm being a successful human being. For so many years, we get told growing up that to be successful, we have to, it's some form. We have to get a job, have an income, find a place to live on our own, find a significant other, reproduce children, and then live until the end of our life. Scenario wise, that's pretty much what we're told from day one. I haven't had a job in almost 3 years. Like a real job. I think I have a job. I don't get a paycheck for it,
Mhm.
but I think it's more of a fulfilling job than I've ever had, but I
Yeah.
don't get a paycheck every day for it
Mhm.
or every week. So I think that, having that mentality that, um, that I have to have a place to live, that I have to have all these things.
Mhm.
Sure, those are securities. They
Mhm.
are. They make it so that life is can be more enjoyable in some degree. But it's not necessary to the level that we think that we need it. I don't have to. For a long time, I thought I had to have $100,000 paying job so that I
Mhm.
could live a lifestyle that I wanted. Um, I don't make even any of that, and I'm
Mhm.
living more of a lifestyle than I've ever have in my entire life.
Mhm.
But if transitioning from before the accident to after the accident, or in the process of the accident, if I didn't have that opportunity through that 2.5+ years that I was on the road to live in the moments, to learn how um, money isn't everything,
Mhm.
materialistic items aren't everything.
Mhm.
Granted, that bicycle that I lost and my camper that I had, um, you know, those were really important things to me. That was my home and my
Yeah.
transportation, and everything I owned was in them. Um, so it was tough, but I think that I was well more prepared for it because of the journey that I was on.
Yeah.
Again, the fact that I went from having this idea of not having purpose to having more purpose than I ever needed. The only thing that changed was I got on a bicycle.
Hmm.
So the purpose was already there. That's why I said earlier, the purpose
Mhm.
was there. I just had to tap into it. I've always been a helper. I knew I was that type of person, but for a long time, I wasn't willing to help myself before I
Mm.
helped other people. And I think that that's really what kind of got me onto a different path. It was when it gets tough and when I start going in the wrong direction for myself, I used to put myself on the back burner to try to help more people. Now I put everybody on the back burner to get myself on point so that
Mm.
I can, I want to finish my meal, cooking it. I'll put it on the back burner on warm while I'm helping other people out.
Mm.
But the longer you leave that back there without heating it up first, it's just sitting there cold. It's getting stiffer, and then it becomes moldy because you left it there for 3 weeks.
Yeah, dude. There was something that you said earlier about you had to learn to be selfish. And I think that, like, I know what you mean by that. I do think there's probably a more eloquent way of putting it that I immediately am having trouble, but
No,
I'm going
and
to try.
I think
Yeah.
let you think of that for a sec, but I
Yeah.
think it's important for people to realize, hearing the word when you have to be selfish. People are
Hmm.
like, "Oh my God, this guy is an a-hole," whatever you want to call me.
Hmm.
Um, but no, you have to be to be selfish makes you selfless, and the more selfish you are in a good way, obviously you can be over selfish and then become negative in it. It's like anything though. If you do too much of it,
Yeah.
you're going to become indulging in it too much. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. To phrase it as selfish, it's weird. Almost any need that we have can be manipulated as us being selfish, and so we feel guilty for nourishing ourselves when we need it. So it's actually, I would say, maybe instead of selfishness, it's just self nourishment.
Yes.
To where it's. But the thing is that which by calling it selfish, though, I kind of like it, like how you just kind of brutally put it, because that's how it feels. That's how it feels to put ourselves first when we need to, because our conscience has been so manipulated in false virtue, I think, in our society, to where we want to be liked more than we want to be right. And
Yes.
it's we don't realize that ownership of something is the only way that you can genuinely share something virtuistically, because if you don't have ownership of something, it's not really yours to share. So it's weird. There's this conflation of, like, there's no rest in actually owning something. It's now mine, but I choose to give it to you. It's like before you can even make that choice, it's made for you. And so we live life having inherited so much stuff that we have it, and instead of us enjoying it and possessing it in a positive way to where we're self-nourished and we feel like we have something to give before we even can go through that process, as we're letting go, we're like, I don't want to let this go, and then you're I'm just giving it because I'm supposed to, and it's kind of like, it's like, no, man, it's like the way for us to really have a healthy nourishment is to have this understanding of inner dynamics of ourselves, to where when we experience good, when we have a certain degree of any degree of good that we have in our lives, that we have to take ownership of our life, and just we just don't, as a zombie or as someone, just because we want to be liked or we want to do good, that we start doing it before we're even capable of doing it from a place of quality. It's almost like, the quality of our life is the commodity of our life. If in order for us to really give something of value, it has to be something of quality. In order for it to be of quality, it has to be something that our own soul is possessed in the thing itself, and whatever we're doing and giving. I'm someone who's always kind of saw the positives of capitalism, and so I've always seen it as an amazing way of us, giving resources and services and stuff. But you always have to be aware that capitalism is not a moral system. It's an amoral system, in that it's not a complete human system. And so in a capitalist system, you have to choose to not partake of it for your own spiritual and mental well-being, because if you're possessed to partake in it because you're supposed to, then you're just going to turn into a zombie just as much as someone who's in like a communist country. It's just a internalized dictatorship rather than one that's outward, and so, like, to me, in our capitalist society, we have, I think, at times, this a hyper capitalism that totally focuses on capitalism being the end all be all of our lives and of society, and it's not at all. It does not factor in spiritualities and factor in even aspects of equality or whatever you want to say, certain other socially conscious aspects. And that's one positive thing about our society, that I think we're beginning to be a little more conscious of our mixed economy, and the whole idea that the quality of our life and that the amount of value we're placing on ourselves, cultivating within ourselves, we can only give value to somebody else as much value as we're willing to give ourselves. I can't care for someone else more than I care for myself, because the very means by which I care for someone else is the vehicle of myself. And so the more that I'm aware of myself and cultivate a healthy relationship within myself, that allows me the capacity to actually have a healthy relationship with somebody else. And so the correct inward spiritual dynamics and just the kind of the laws of how we operate within ourselves in a healthy manner, that we can feel the flow of energy and the awakening of ourselves and the sort of science of ourselves, the more that we can kind of begin to understand and comprehend, albeit not fully, but in measure, how someone else functions on the inside, and that our growing awareness can begin to produce a society that is more self-aware and aware of the deeper dimensions of humanity. I really kind of feel like the more that we're able to tap into our own individual mental health and spiritual health and kind of begin to expand ourselves, it allows us to begin to remain kind of in all the idiosyncrasies of ourself and our own life, that we then can bring to seeing the details of other people, man. And we have so many different approaches to what we're doing. Like, man, like, there are some people out there that I feel like what they need are my little nuggets of insight and, artistic ways. But there's some people that don't need that. There's some people that just need like a genuine person that feels with them. I'm trying to learn and adopt some of your approaches to things that keeps me away from being too academic or too brainy. I don't want people to feel defective. I don't want to, and I feel like language is a way that I try to bond with people, and it sort of like highlight something, some internal thing that's hard to say. To me, that's like the need that, like in my own life, that has helped me, is kind of forming areas of perception. But sometimes it's like people just need to be felt. They just need to feel loved.
Saying hello to somebody, if they're having a bad day or they're feeling like nobody's noticing them, and you just say, you acknowledge them, they got the acknowledgement they needed, their day is going to be better. It's important for people to realize, like, we need acknowledgement in our lives to some degree. Think of it as, if you're looking for acknowledgement, be willing to give it out as well. And the more acknowledgement you give, the more acknowledgement you'll receive. I feel like that's what's helped me a lot, is I started acknowledging people to a different degree than I ever did in my entire life. And now I get more acknowledgement than I think I need personally, but I think it's because I give so much out.
Yeah.
So, love is important. It's definitely something that we all need, and we should love each other and love everybody. For a lot of people hearing, like, and I'll say it to you, Josh. Josh, I love you. I love people. I love
you too, man.
Connections. But when somebody hears somebody say "I love you" to somebody, they get freaked out sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's because I'm not saying I love you in a a sexual relationship matter. It's like I have a love for the humanity that we share.
Yeah.
Or a love for a bond that we've made, or whatever that love is for. But it doesn't have to be what so many people think it might be. So it's important to share love with people and share acknowledgement and be just be.
Yeah.
Be part of humanity.
I think our identity, too often we think is something kind of static, when in my own experience, it's like our identity is kind of the transmission. It allows us to kind of function in different areas and yet maintain the same authenticity in different areas, and I feel like love in some ways has a similar function. It's like love is something that allows you to see what individual need is needed in the moment with someone, and for it to function in whatever way it's needed. And so there's a sort of transmissional essence to love, to where when someone, it's almost like when you say, I love you to someone, like, even when you just said it to me, it was kind of like, there are so different areas where that can apply in ways that, like, I know how it's meant. And even in my own life, it's almost like understanding what that means, understanding really what love means. When you develop a relationship with someone in a friendship, and someone like has such an approval of you and is accepting you, that comfort, it's like allowing yourself to not just and even like I kind of did it, is kind of like there's that immediate, oh yeah, I love you too. And it's kind of like, wait, hold on a second, receive that for a second. Like we were just saying earlier, it's almost like when someone says that, let it hit for a second, and say, you know what? Damn, man, thanks, dude. That's awesome, man. Like, thank you, dude. Like, I love you too, man. And it's like, it's weird. Just a little bit of a few seconds of allowing that to just kind of rest and to accept it, and then give it.
You get the true meaning of it.
Yeah, it's not just like, oh yeah, I love you too, man. It's kind of like, wait, dude, just receive it for a second, and that's sort of nuance of, I think, understanding love and being able to take our relationships, our friendships to the next level, and to build community at the next level, is developing that inward authenticity, to where, man, when someone says these things, and when we can define our reality within ourselves and within each other, we feel that bond, we feel that sense of real connection that allows these conversations, in the conversations with each other, to really be the things that ultimately are one of the things that we value the most in our lives. I don't think we look back and our sense of accomplishment, it's going to be, more so tied to our relationships, and think that we were able to accomplish with each other in true community than anything we're able to hang on a shelf or take to the grave and, in the form of a trophy or something. It's like, it's that immaterial essence of how we relate with each other, man, that is of such precious quality.
There's just so much out there that people think that, mental health is a bad thing. Everybody has mental health. It's just as important as our physical health. So make sure you guys are out there, taking the opportunity to engage your mental health. If somebody's having a mentally bad day, don't think that they're, don't write them off. Don't be part of their progress. We need to band together. It's not the old days where you just say, you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Let me help you figure it out. Be part of that person's stuff. Don't let them just go figure it out on their own, because that mental health becomes suicidal, idle, thoughts. So it's important to, to be part of it. Don't assume that they'll figure it out on their own, because sometimes we can, but a lot of times we need to get it out there. So even if you're not part of their healing process, in the sense of being part of the, holding their hand to get them to go to therapy, but just being there, just, to let them vent, to get those thoughts out there. Sometimes just saying it out loud will be the difference. It doesn't matter what the case is or what you're going through. We all have mental health. That's the important thing. That's one thing that I want to make sure. And for anybody out there that's never dealt with mental, for suicide, or been involved with somebody that has taken their own life from suicide, don't believe that that it won't happen to you, or that it won't, that it can't happen to somebody that
Yeah.
Be engaged. That's why I said, getting education, getting trained. So many people in this world know CPR, but we didn't know it until someone trained us, or we got trained to do it. And now we can save lives if somebody's choking, or do the Heimlich maneuver. A lot of people have been taught those in one form or another in their lifetime.
Yes.
So, think of the Heimlich maneuver, CPR. Think of suicide or mental health the same way. We need to get in the mind, that mindset that it is the same.
Yes. In fact, it's more likely. It's more likely that it'll be used. The tools for mental health are just as much, if not more, needed today than, because there's so much less understanding of mental health. We know how to not chew too much food. Generally we know that, but we don't know when to stop with the burdens we take on our life. We don't know how do we distinguish or delineate between what's my responsibility and what's not my responsibility. What are things that I'm fulfilling myself and self-nourishing myself, and selfishness.
You bring up that, and I like that. We sit there a lot of times and we say, what's my responsibility, what's not my responsibility, or how should I get involved or should I not get involved? Think of this, and this is, even if you've never been in this state of mind, when you're looking at somebody that could use your help and you're sitting there saying, should I help them or not? Think of it, if you were in their shoes, would you want somebody to help you? And if you're like, heck yeah, I want someone to be there for me, and be there for that person. That's your moral compass saying that's what you should be doing. And that's what you should be doing. We can't be there 100% of the time. We can't hold people's hands 100% of the time, but we can show them a lot of things. And I think so. Another stigma that we all deal with is, it's one that's changing, thankfully, but it's still a lot of people disbelieve. If someone is suicidal, or even if they're not suicidal, ask them if they're thinking of suicide. A lot of people won't ask that question because they are afraid that we will put that thought in their head and then they'll go do it. Or I've had people that are worried that, I wish I could listen to somebody that's that way, but I'm afraid that I'll become suicidal. I think it's important to realize that it's not contagious. If you are going through your own stuff, then I understand that could, maybe it be a trigger for a memory that you've dealt with. if that's the case, when it gets to an uncomfortable spot, hey, I think that I really want to listen, but this portion that you're getting into, I've personally have dealt with something similar. I just don't know if I'm the right person, but I want to be involved. So maybe I can get you to somebody that can listen to that part.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be the person to listen to everything, but be involved and be willing to ask that question. Are you thinking of suicide? If we got to that question more often, if somebody's thinking of suicide and you call them out on it,
Yeah.
They're gonna appreciate that somebody's at least concerned enough that they're thinking about that.
Yeah.
If they're not thinking about suicide and you ask them, hey man, are you suicidal? Nah, man, I'm good. Like I don't even know why you would think that, but thank you for being concerned enough to be at least willing to ask that question.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're showing your careness when you ask that question,
Mm-hmm.
regardless if you know them or if they're not suicidal or if they are.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to be upfront about that. And I tell people back in the 60s, for instance, we dealt with cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Cancer is a big thing nowadays. We know about it. We talk about it. We share it. When somebody gets in the family, everybody comes together. They're part of the process of the chemo, whatever process they go through to get rid of the cancer, if they can. Back in the 60s, people thought cancer was contagious. You kept it within your family. You didn't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same process that mental health and suicide are going through right now. We've known about mental health for a little while now, but there's still a lot about the mental health and about our minds that we don't know. We know more about the ocean, I think, than we do about our own brain. There's just so much that we don't understand, but be willing to take it as it comes and be willing to be part of it all, to change it.
Even if we discovered aliens and they taught us future traveling technology that taught us how to clone dinosaurs, the human mind and human consciousness would still be a greater mystery. The greatest mystery of the universe isn't aliens. It's not UFOs. It's the human soul. It's the human mind that we still don't have. We still don't know what consciousness is,
Yeah. Again, change. A lot of people are afraid to hear about aliens. There's, I love that in our galaxy, we are in the planet that brings life, but there's multiples and many, many, many different galaxies out there. And there is there's a zone that life can happen in. And if a planet is in that zone, I would almost guarantee that there's probably some form of life, maybe not like human looking beings, but there's some form of life on that planet. And I think that's another thing that we have to think about, the changes that have occurred. We know that there's more galaxies out there. We need to look at it as like a multi-dimensional thing. Like the next galaxy is a different dimension. Maybe it's the same life. Maybe it's me again in that next galaxy. Who knows? But I have to be willing to hear that and feel that change.
If you don't have the capacity to exercise that, just the idea of it, man, it indicates there's a smallness to your application of your own awareness of reality. You should be able to test these things within yourself. And are there aliens? I don't know. I've never
seen them.
I know there's some freaky stuff. I have even stories within my own family of UFOs that are people that would not lie. They've told me straight on that they've seen. There's some stories that are really quite incredible. We live in an amazing reality, an amazing universe, and it's that attachment to that deeper sense of mystery that brings out your own idiosyncratic experience of this place, that the more we're able to tap into it, we can kind of have these cutting edge conversations about the future and about what might exist. In my own spiritual life, that's been one of the biggest things that's been exercised, is my capacity to understand the depths of the mystery of our experience, the mystery of this world. Who are some of your biggest inspirations in your life?
That's a tough question to answer, to be honest, because I find inspiration in anybody, in everybody. I don't have that like that individual person that I guess I look at, because I find that inspiration through anybody and everybody, even if it's, sometimes I find inspiration in the people I don't want to be in or be like. So, you know, I'm going to leave it as there's a lot of people out there that I look up to, but there's also a lot of people that I don't look up to that have also inspired me to be either a better version of them or myself, so I don't become like them. So, even the bad ones I look up to in a way. So,
yeah, fascinating answer, man. Like I know when I asked my last guest this too, it spawned a conversation about ultimately like your biggest inspiration should be yourself. Like you should inspire yourself when it comes to when the rubber meets the road. It's when it gets really difficult. Yeah, there may be some people you can look to for inspiration, but ultimately, like the own fire inside you can only be stoked by who you are.
I look at myself as well as my inspiration. I wouldn't be able to do what I've done up to this point without the drive that I have.
Yeah.
But that drive comes from, people telling me that I can't do something. Even myself, if I tell myself I told myself I couldn't do podcasting. Now I do podcasting. I'm not the greatest at it, but I do it. Cycling, I never told myself I could do that. I was, like I said, I told myself I was better than it. The fact that I can get on a bicycle and ride is because of a friend of mine that literally, that's the whole reason One Pedal at a Time even exists. The friend that got me on a bicycle one day on my third ride, he looked at me and goes, I was complaining that, like most human beings do. I was complaining about the future and I was complaining about the past. And he stopped one day and he looked at me and he goes, "It's one pedal at a time. It's left, right, left, right." And dude, that became my monologue, that became my life. That literally transformed everything for me.
That's awesome.
So, as much as my boy Sean, which is my inspiration to get me on the bicycle, I look up to him. But again, I really have to look within myself for a lot of it, because you can have as much inspiration as you want from outside sources, but you have to have the drive to make it happen. And thankfully I have the drive most of the time. So,
and finding that drive, that inspiration, and that light, it's, that goes back to the mystery of consciousness and the mystery of your own, the own riddle of your own purpose, of taking multiple different parts of your life and not one of them ever solely defining your life, but factoring into a whole, and I think cultivating a way of us finding meaning in everything, in every area. It's, I hope that's something that we both can help promote, different ways of looking at that, because it's a hard thing to talk about. How do you kindle that drive, and how do you kindle it? Because it's a very individual thing. And at the same time, it's exercised coming together in community and finding people that are like-minded. And, and so it's why I kind of call it a riddle, because it's a paradox, your individuality and then being a part of community. They at times will have opposing dimensions to themselves, but yet at times they will feed each other in ways that one dimension by itself can't be nourished and can't be exercised the same way without it. And so it's that bond with the other is really kind of it's a really interesting thing. And man, we've been able to talk about so many cool things, man. This has been a real pleasure. And I hope we can do this again. I'd love to have you on again. And
yeah, for everybody out there, definitely, if you're struggling, again, talk about it, reach out to somebody. If for whatever reason, don't reach out to one person, reach out to as many people as you can. It's important to get as many people out there that know what you're dealing with, the better. If somebody isn't able to help you, understand that they're probably going through their own stuff. It's not that they don't understand how to help. So don't look at it as a negative thing. But if you ask 10 people for help, you're at least going to get one of them, and guarantee you're probably get at least four to six.
Yeah.
So be willing to ask for help and talk about it. And then also, for everybody out there that's not struggling, if you're in sound mind right now, that's a blessing. I'm glad you are. But be willing to listen to somebody. Be willing to engage somebody that you know that might be struggling, and be part of their process of getting on the right path as well. For anybody out there that wants to follow my journey, definitely check me out at ridewithdanusa.com and on the social media platforms. My nonprofit, check out the One Pedal at a Time movement at OPAAT, OPAAT movement.com. And, again, check out the Movement Monday series on Heart of Volunteer Veterans podcast, which was a great series that I had the opportunity to do. And then, starting in April, if you have an opportunity to check out Friends from the Road podcast, it'll be, we're going to have conversations that are inspiring, encouraging, and motivating. So we're going to try to, we're going to keep bringing that positive vibes and one pedal at a time, one podcast at a time, and one person at a time.
Heck yeah, man. Good times, dude. Well, man, let's stay in touch. And man, dude, I think we'll wrap it, man. Good times, man. Have a great night, man. And I'll talk with you real soon. Okay.
All right, Josh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.